now getting into cognitive load theory, which, like a few topics in this unit, so important for students to know. They probably won't be that interested in it, which is a shame, and it's pretty tricky to comprehend. But anyway, we're going to look at smartphones and cognitive load to start off with. As always, what is cognitive load? We have to start there, and then we'll look at how smartphones affect it. Charadanary, let's play a game of this. This is a fun one. I always get students to come up with the key terms themselves. So much faster for me just to cut up bits of blank paper and give to them, and then write it down on a pen as they bring up the ideas. And also, it means that they do a little bit of review at the beginning themselves to try to think of the key terms. My video explanation explains that if you need it. All right, we review what were the aims and methods of the that study, and then I added this. This is not in the textbook, but I added it here just in case. All right. Think, Pair, Share. Do they think smartphones should be banned in schools? I 100% think they should be banned. If you've got enough of a split opinion, you could have a bit of a class debate, see how that goes, and then we'll do a quick experiment. Now, there'll be 3 conditions. Now, I'm just assuming your school has not banned smartphones. I hope by the time you're watching this, the world knows to not let kids have smartphones at school. But anyway, get them to one of these 3 conditions. Now, the outside in another room is a bit of a security one. I'm not sure how you would go about that, so that I'll just leave you to problem solve. But if I was doing it in my class, I would put them in a plastic tray, and then I would take it to a teacher in another room and say, would you mind just having these phones for me for 10 minutes? Right. Okay. So they've got 5 minutes. Now the things you need are in the activities files. Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. Okay, so this is like a fluid intelligence test. It's like 10 questions. I was going to put this in the workbook, but I figure it's just probably easier to print it out, and it's just a simple multi-choice fluid intelligence test. Now I got ChatGPT to make it for me. It was very, very simple. The test itself doesn't matter. It's that students just going through the process of doing this. So 5 minutes to do that. If they finish early, they could read this section in the textbook. And then next, once everyone's finished, get them to do the digit span test. There is the link, and hopefully this is self-explanatory, or they can figure out how to do this, right? Start at 3, go fast, and go reverse mode, and then their score is whatever level is when they get it wrong for the first time. Chalk and talk, the original study, and then here I would get students to come up and write, if depending on their condition, write their score on the fluid intelligence test. You have the answers in the activities files there, right? And we can calculate the averages and see, is there a difference? And we can do the same thing with the digit span. Get the students to come up, write their scores on the board. All right, and then, and this is the original study, and of course I can't predict what your results will be, but why do they think, at least in this study, if not in the class replication, that they scored higher when the phones weren't in the room? See what students come up with. Now, a point here, this could be your class practical if you wanted it to, but I just find it easier because how would you do, you've got to think about, if this was your class practical, how would you do the same thing using a different method? Like cognitive process of doing observation. You've got to think through that really, really carefully. So I would probably maybe say that for later on. That said, this is probably the study I've recommended for the class practical. Anyway, I forget. Right. So now, chalk talk. Cognitive load, what is it? It's demands placed on a working memory while we're trying to learn something. It's basically how hard are we thinking while we're trying to complete a task, right? The more we have to think, the higher the cognitive load. Now here's an example, right? So if you're trying to make abstract things concrete, it's easier to visualize. It reduces the cognitive load because we can just see it. So if you're trying to teach a kid 2, you show them 2 bananas. You don't try to conceptually explain the concept of 2. And another, if we're learning another language, you say, okay, rako is a Maori word. And if I was to describe it, perennial plant with the elongated stem, you'd be like, what? Okay, there's so many words here. I'm having to think. This is so much cognitive load. Whereas I just go, oh, rako is tree. Well, I know tree, so rako. We can come back to this actually when we do cognitive load theory, because this is germane cognitive load. It's connecting to my existing schema of what a tree is or things I know, and Rocco it's easier to learn. Now, I thought, in the next lesson, I use an example with Shakespeare, which hopefully might make cognitive load a bit more straightforward. Here, why the brain drain happens, possibly is because it's adding to the cognitive load. You start thinking about it, it's taking up working memory capacity because you start thinking about things that aren't the thing that you're doing. And even if that's just in front of you. Interestingly, in that study, they had a second study where they had the phones turned on or off, and even when the phones were turned off or on, it didn't make a difference. So it wasn't the phone being on getting notifications, it was even just the presence of the phone itself was enough to hijack their attention, or drain their brain, as you will, and reduce their abilities. Now we can come back to the original question: do they think they should be banned? I doubt your students have changed their mind, but it might be a fun way to finish the class before they get into notes. And then for homework, you could get them to read this Eton article about Eton, the elite school in Britain, issuing brick phones instead. Hallelujah, I love my brick phone. And they can watch a little bit about Jonathan Haidt here. That was the best video of his I could find, which is a shame because he talks about this stuff a lot. Right. Next, we will do cognitive load theory.